Hey, what's up guys, Maroon Hardware here. Today we have a PC that didn't cost $200 or $500 or even $50 for me to get. I got this pre-built PC for free, courtesy of a friend of mine from work. He had a gaming rig update not that long ago, and because he knew I love to tinker and work on computers, he let me take his old system off his hands for no cost at all. So I'm curious, if you paid $1,800 for a gaming PC about 4 years ago, is it still relevant in 2017? Can it still power through after all this time, and was the initial investment worth it in the end? Well, let's see. At face value, this computer from CyberPower PC simply screams pre-built. From the outward aesthetic and the design choice for the case, to the components within this beast. The friend that donated this gaming rig to me got it at around 2013, and at the time, this was a warrior among peasants. So what I want to find out, through some benchmarks and games that were popular during this big guy's birth, along with some modern AAA titles, is actually how long a pre-built gaming system can realistically last over time. But before we get to answering this question, let's have a look at the components inside, shall we? Inside, we have an Intel Core i7-3820 processor with 16GB of DDR3 memory. These parts hold up well even today, so we're off to a pretty solid start in my opinion. Even without the ability to overclock the CPU, the stock and boost clock 3.6 and 3.8 GHz frequency are still respectable for this 3rd generation Intel processor. If we take a look over to our means of storage, we can see the 120GB boot SSD along with the 1TB Western Digital mechanical hard drive, which remains as a very popular combination for mid-range gaming PCs even today. This is also an area where this rig shines through the dust I found inside the chassis. And speaking of dust, I can honestly say this was the dirtiest system I've ever worked with. As if the internals never saw good cleaning ever. My friend complained about constant slowdowns at even points where the PC would crash outright during the boot process, which can in fact be caused by accumulated dust buildup. Dust is not only conductive, which is a complete no-no for any sensitive electronic components on the motherboard and such, but it also helps trap heat inside the case, causing things like the GPU and CPU to thermal throttle like mad. After a half hour of careful cleaning and a ton of compressed air, we have a PC resurrected from the grave, for lack of a better term. Besides the, honestly, pretty outrageous 850 watt power supply, there's nothing overkill about this rig even when you do factor in the time it was assembled. I'm speculating that since the GTX 660 Ti came with the system, along with the fact that the amount of dust I found inside could be sufficient enough to cause another theoretical ice age, that this gaming PC was exactly what you got if you bought this exact model. My friend told me that there might have been something wrong with the GPU, and yes, he wasn't completely wrong. Other than being the most dust-caked component in the build, the freaking protective tape on the backplate and single fan was melted on. Jeez. I wonder if this was an accident on the assembler's part or what, but back on topic. I disconnected the screws holding the 660 Ti in place, gave it a good blowing, and successfully removed the plastic that was left on an insufficiently cooled card. After a quick run on the firmware test, I was reassured that there was no harm done to the GPU after all. Good news there. The PC itself came with an OEM copy of Windows 8 Pro 64-bit, but after realizing that my friend forgot the password he had for his profile, I installed Windows 10 Home and updated the system to the 1607 build of the OS on his system for now. Now that we've gotten acquainted with the, again, $1,800 PC from 4 years ago, let's see how she does in some games. As a quick side note, I like to mention that I received no crashes while running the Unigine Heaven benchmark for about 30 minutes continually, so stability shouldn't have been a problem, even if I decided to overclock the GTX 660 Ti. But if only that was an option. I'll explain what I mean in a few minutes. All of the synthetic benchmarks and in-game test trials were done in 1080p, but the specific graphical presets I decided to test against the system will be displayed as I continue on. Overall, thermal stayed well below 75 degrees from the GPU and the CPU with a replacement from the included water cooler that was completely dry of any form of liquid, remained at a comfortable 49 degrees Celsius throughout. When it came to Far Cry Primal, I ran the in-game benchmark after realizing that after trying to play the game from a previous save point I loaded onto the system, this game would also crash to the desktop after a few minutes of playing. Are you seeing the same trend I'm noticing here? No? Well, this test is going to give us a basic idea of how my friend's old gaming system would function through this game at the high detail preset at 1080p resolution. As you can see from the results, we once again were able to maintain a respectable frame rate. Not really much else to say here besides the fact that the minimum and maximum frame rate we had throughout our run stayed consistent and didn't have a ton of spikes here and there. Let's move forward. So, in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Legendary Edition with about 80 mods installed for whatever reason, I guess they're still attached to the game after I manually uninstalled them previously, we saw a fairly steady frame rate throughout, until the game spontaneously crashed to the desktop after about 5 minutes of gameplay. Of course, that's the trade-off in case you mod any PC game, so your mileage may vary in performance and compatibility. I suggest keeping the mods at a low on this system as to limit the amount of conflicts that may come up between core game files and the editing that third-party mods and things of that nature might bring up. We had a maximum of a pretty doubtful 255 FPS inside of the College of Winterhold, an average of 59 FPS during combat scenes outside of the college, and an average of about 43 frames per second while we ran around densely forested areas. This proved to be more than playable. We have good results. Let's move on to the next game. Well, I should actually say the last game, because Crysis 3, Doom, and Battlefield 1 simply would not start without immediately crashing. I even got a few blue screens, so I decided to end the tests with my favorite game at the moment, which is Killing Floor 2. While wanting to get the best results possible out of the system at the time, I refrained from playing online and instead played a few rounds offline. And what do you know, a solid 62 FPS and not even a single twitch in the frame rate. A buttery smooth, glorious, and balanced 62 frames a second. Good to know the system can still hold its own against some pretty modern titles, and the game looks as crisp and beautiful as it does on my Ryzen 1700 build, which you can see my video on in the link in the video description below. Wink wink. So, in conclusion, sure, my testing methodology can be seen as a bit flawed, but this system did sustain quite a bit of neglect over the past 4 years. Again, the plastic was left on the GPU and was melted on, the dust poured from the case like someone dropped a bag of cocaine on the floor, and only God knows what else happened before I got my hands on the system. But for what she's worth, I'd say for the game she was able to run, the system did a fine job, even today. So I guess the answer to our original question is a pretty solid yes. Depending on what games you play and how you manage your expectations with regards to detail presets, and maybe even monitor resolutions, a pre-built PC can last, and you can surely get your money's worth out of a system you bought from a reputable manufacturer. Just please be sure to take the proper steps in maintaining your system, clearing out the case, dust filters, and components inside of dust particles with compressed air, and overall, just care for your PC. Your PC is your portal to a whole world of gaming, media viewing, and other great pastimes. Treat it right, and it will be able to face time head-on, and age gracefully the longer you keep it running. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button and get subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, and be sure to look out for more awesome videos like this one coming at you really soon. Thanks so much again for watching. I'm Rowan Hardwares, and have yourself a good one. Peace out, everyone.